Okay, we are going to attempt a deployment of a web app with a database and the one with authentication, right? We're just like the last one we just did. And you guys can follow along with this part because you will need to do this. Azure for Students is the Google search that you will plug in. And you're going to click on this. And you're going to see build in the cloud for free with Azure Students, start for free. Before you do this, I want you to register with an account, screen share. Yes. I want you to register with the account that you authenticate with Visual Studio with. So let's open up Visual Studio and figure out what email account that you're authenticated with, right? So if you just kind of open up a solution, and I think it's under
account settings.
File, account settings. So notice I am registered under Visual Studio with my EA Gudmestead at rankin.edu. I'm going to ask that you register your account with the same credentials that you are authenticated with on Visual Studio, because we're going to need Visual Studio and Azure to be playing nice together, and that's one of the prereqs. So why don't you guys just take a few minutes and go through this registration process. You're going to click on Start for Free. You get $100 Azure credit, no credit card required. Okay, so this is what we're going to use to get started. Of course, Azure Cloud Services, host your servers, your web servers, your database servers, host them all on Microsoft Cloud with Azure. Start for free and go through this process. Now, this is the one step of the process I did do. Is I already went through this registration process. So now you should be, once you log in, or once you register, you obviously log in because that's how that works. And you get to a screen like this where you're logged in, and ooh, I got $200 credit. Look at me go.
Yeah, I think we all get 200.
Didn't the screen say 100?
Mine says 200.
But now this says 200. But literally just a screen ago it said, anyways, yay, 200. So I'm getting asked the question of, hey, I used my personal account. Should I register with Azure on my personal Gmail, or should I log out of Visual Studio and log back into my Visual Studio with my inside ranking? Just because when you have a .edu, that's how you tend to get these benefits, right? So I'm going to log out of Visual Studio with my personal account and log into Visual Studio with my rankin.edu. The way to do that is once you're on this screen, again, File, Account, you're going to click on Sign Out of your account here, and then you're going to log in with your inside ranking username and password. So go ahead and click on Sign Out here, log in with your inside ranking credentials. Mm-hmm. Now, this will work for you guys. You might do this again. You might register for another free trial under your personal account another time when you're not a ranking student. Right? For now, let's just do all this with our ranking credentials. So one mistake that I have made here was I just signed into Azure using my inside ranking credentials, and I did not register for the free credits.
So sign up and do that.
And so, yeah, make sure that you actually go through the signing up process and sign up for those free credits. Do not make that mistake that I made, which is just sign into the Azure Portal. Okay, make sure to go through that like I want the free credits.
I might have made that mistake already.
Well, good. I'm glad you guys are learning my pain. I spent like an hour while you guys were testing doing this, and just to find out that I had to make sure to register for those free credits. So yeah, once you register for the free credits, then you log in. Under this little notification, I see $200 credit remaining. So hopefully you guys can all get to that point.
Well, it says.
Okay, so some of my students are filling out the form, and they're not seeing this notification bell that says $200 in credits remaining. So we're kind of in the Azure Portal, and the question is, where can you see if you have any sort of credits? And I'm going to pause and we're going to dig around and see if we can't find it.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
what I'm saying, too.
So I think my students aren't exactly seeing, I could see a free trial on mine, they're not exactly seeing the same thing. So kind of on the home page, there's a subscriptions, and then I see a free trial on mine, whereas your guys' it says subscription one.
Yeah.
Okay, the fact that you're here and it says active, you have an active subscription.
Yeah.
Okay, then I think we're ready to roll forward at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, so we got one called Azure for Students. It might be called different things. Here's the question, did everyone fill out the form? And everyone is authenticated with an account here that matches a Visual Studio account. And then you're here and it says that there's a subscription. That's where we're going to start. Now, the next thing is to pick the app that we're going to deploy. And because the most complete one that I have is the one that I just did with all of you with the identity and all that. So for me, that was in the student files, student download, EX Solutions, Chapter 13 Bookstore SOL. So this is the solution that had my user accounts and all this kind of fun stuff. So if I boot that up, right, I had some different users. If I were to log in, okay, so we got this Joe Mama that is an admin that has 6 A's in his password. And we got manage users, and we could see my different users, and we got one admin. Okay, so this is the app that I'm going to deploy. And they have a publish wizard, right? So we're going to take the steps through the publish wizard. And start here. Now, I followed through the book, and the first thing it has you do is publish to your file system. We're not going to publish to the file system. You guys aren't interested in publishing to a file system. The purpose of publishing to a file system is to then later FTP. Like you're going to take those files and transfer them with an FTP client like FileZilla and just transfer files from one place to another that way. We're not going to use FTP, but basically you should see, like if I click on new, do you guys come to a window like this where it's like, where are you going to publish to? And I think a lot of this is just going to hopefully just be intuitive. That's the point of these wizards, is that they're supposed to be intuitive, but there are a lot of steps. So
I'm a little lost. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
How did you get to the publish part?
yeah, so the publish feature is under build,
Okay,
and then there's published.
got it.
So build, publish.
Should we be doing this along with
Yeah,
you on the
if you-
same, with the same app, or does
Yeah, I want you guys to follow along. Sure. Same app is fine. You can delete it. You got $100. Sports Pro's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say because that would be a more like built-out version for us to do. Is that okay?
Yeah.
The case study.
Yeah, the case study should be fine. I don't see any problems with it. You have identity on that too, right? So,
Yeah.
so let's go ahead and click new, and because here's Azure. Of course, our selection is Azure. So is everyone at this window? In the back, you guys good? Yep. Click next.
Wait, you went to build and then I'm sorry, I was setting it up.
Build, publish,
Okay.
publish. And then I clicked on new because this is the screen that I had, but I'm just going to click on a new publish profile. We're making a publish profile. We're going to click on Azure. Now we're going to click on an Azure app. We're making a web app, so it's an Azure app. Windows, it is important to select Windows over Linux here. Just compatibility thing. Anyways, we're building a Microsoft product. It just makes sense to make it a Windows server on the back end. So this screen basically says this is an Azure app. This screen is where you're going to see your subscription name. And this is, if this didn't work, do you guys all see your subscription name here?
I gotta sign in first.
Sign in first then.
Mine says Azure subscription 1.
Subscription 1's what you want.
Yep.
That was the name of your subscription. We were all looking at that. And it says there are no instances available, so of course that's what we're going to have to create. Create new app service is what we need to do. So not a create, I'm not sure, we need to create an Azure app service. Okay, and it's going to kind of fill this in for us. We are on page 713. And our name, I'll just call this Bookstore App. And this is going to be like a globally unique name. This will probably be on the prefix of your URL. So it'll be bookstoreapp.azurewebsites.com, right? So for that reason, Bookstore App is Evan Bookstore. Evan Book App.
Bookstore demo is available. If you like bookstore dash demo.
Sure, you choose one, I'll choose another.
Yeah.
So I'm going with Evan Book App.
We all do it at the same
Yeah,
time.
I think there's some sort of unique identifier. It'll be like Josh dash. You know.
So everything else, just keep the same really. The resource group, the hosting plan. Click create, and that might take a minute. Okay, so I've got to this screen. Students are pretty much working. I think there was some name conflicts. 2 students had the same name. Some beat others to the punch, and so at this point, there's really nothing else to do here besides to click on finish. Now, we haven't deployed anything yet.
So whenever you got to that last screen, did you change anything or did you just leave it?
No, I didn't change. I haven't changed anything besides the name of my app. After I created this, I created the app service, and in there I changed the name. I kept the subscription the same. I kept the resource group the same and the hosting plan the same. Okay, now I clicked on finish, and it brought me to this screen. We have not published yet because we need to do some database work. Okay, for whatever reason, some students had an extra window they had to close to then get to this screen. Now, of course, if we didn't have a SQL Server database, we would just kind of, if it was a more simple website, we could just click publish. But we have a few more steps because we have a database. And anytime you have a database, the connection string is something you have to configure, right? The connection string is one thing on your local machine. It's obviously going to be a different connection string on the internet, which again is kind of your credentials to the database online. Yeah.
Before we move on, I just made it to this publish page. I just want to make sure
Yep.
I get the.
Yeah, so the answer to that was there was a checkbox to automatically close when succeeded. And so somehow I had that box checked, and so I didn't have that window to close that some of you had to close, because ultimately it was successful. You got the green check mark, you click close. Here we are. So roughly on the book, not that you're following along, we're on page 717, where we need to look at service dependencies. Here's our service dependencies. Here's our SQL Server database. And I'm going to click on this add a new service dependency. So this is still on the publish profile. Add new service dependency. And an Azure SQL database. Now,
Wait, I'm sorry, how'd you get to that?
Down at the very bottom where it says SQL Server or Service Dependencies.
so I didn't see the Azure SQL Database, so I filtered, right? I typed in SQL, and here I see Azure SQL Database. So let's click on Next. And now under SQL Databases, we're going to create new. So we're going to connect to a SQL Azure database. We need to create new. Flip the page. Follow. I mean, we're just following this wizard. The database name. The database. Sure, I'll call it bookstore. Now. I don't think we're going to change it. I'm going to leave that default name. I'm going to leave the default subscription, the default resource group, server. Okay. Database server, obviously there is no database server, so maybe we need to click on new SQL server. And we're going down. Look how many wizards we got going here.
Oh my.
Bookstore DB server. So I'm going to say bookstore. I'll say Evan bookstore DB. Evan books server cannot be empty. A to Z, no capital.
Only lowercase. That's weird. And this is where you clicked on database server new for this one?
I did.
Okay.
Database server new. Now this is creating an administrator account for my SQL server. Okay, so SQL Server is a piece of software that's running. Okay, so this is a database piece of software. It's a DBMS, if you will, database management, DBMS software, DBMS, database management software. Anyways, administrator username. Joe Mama. I'll just keep my, now there's gonna be some password rules here, so I'll just kind of put in my password. So remember your administrator username and password.
What's your password?
Remember your username and password. Let's click OK. So now my server is lit up. Evan Gudmestead, OK. And I put in my password because how many people do you think will type in a username and password and then forget it when prompted to put it in immediately after?
My dad does that.
Enough people?
Yeah.
Enough people, so they populate that for you. Let's click on create.
Anything like side by dad with a problem, I just immediately put it in my notes
Right,
because
yeah.
I know I'm gonna need it.
I created a collaborative note so everyone can see everyone's password.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Oh, I got it. It's because you use like CFD.
Probably because you guys are naming each other's. See what happened with me and Mel.
Wait, yeah, does the database name need to be still each other's keys?
I mean, I think it has to be something, like.
The database server.
What's your name, huh? Stores for DB, baby. Bro, what you trying to get into?
I'm gonna pause and either let this succeed or not. It'll take a minute. So this is taking several minutes, and I mean, if it's anything like the database software that I've installed before, I mean, you're installing a fair amount of software, you know, so understandable. Okay. So now we're here back on the connect to the Azure DB, it would make sense to click on the bookstore DB and the resource group and the server name. I wonder if I left the R off of server. Free trial, I'm going to click next. I'm going to hold off right here. This is great that it's having us do this, but I'm going to pause and let everyone catch up. Okay, so we left off on this screen here, which is connection strings, and this is a disconnect from the book. I mean, the book is brand spanking new as of, what is the date on this thing? It's 2023, like January of 23, and here we are in April of 23. And this wizard has changed steps, which is okay. You know, connection strings, okay. So notice there was a drop down here and I selected this and it got all upset with me. So it just said the word connection strings before that. So I guess we leave it as connection strings.
Mine didn't get upset at it.
It didn't get upset at you?
Click the connect when there should be like one underneath it, right? The connection string.
Yeah.
Oh, this one? Maybe I'll just keep it, whatever you're doing.
I mean, I don't know. Now I can't even select it, so it's kind of acting a little funny. So that doesn't make me feel good. So I'm just going to put in my database administrator and my database password for my database username and my database password. And I'm going to leave the default radio button Azure App Settings. So I didn't touch this drop down box in a way that worked for anything for me. So I kept that to the word connection strings, plural, Evan Gudmestead, password. I'm gonna click next. And I'm gonna click finish. Complete Azure SQL Database is configured.
You clicked both, you had both checkboxes checked, right? On the last screen before you clicked finish? There was like the NuGet package.
Yeah, whatever they were checked, I just let them both checked. Paying attention to the URL, evanbookapp.azurewebsites.net. Does look like connected to the bookstore database. I'm happy with that. Connection string says connection. Connection strings, bookstore context. I think that last step in the wizard kind of looking at page 721. It says the dialog for editing the settings. And so if
Okay, so if you go, more actions and then set it or edit, then you can get that page.
more actions and then edit, that kind of brings us here to the settings page, and there's a couple of checkboxes that there's apply the migration on publish, and
It says use connection string on the button.
Yeah, if you click on the databases tab, it'll checkbox that pops up.
okay, so if I expand, now that this is done spinning, I'm going to expand databases, use this connection string at runtime. and expand this one.
I see that. This one.
I think you could just publish after that.
Wait, did you have an error on your entity framework?
Yeah, my migrations aren't too happy.
Same.
Everyone the same? Your migrations are fine?
Where do you see that error in the dialog box? Entity framework integration.
Yes. Yeah, see, you have the checkbox.
Yeah, I was able to check it.
Mine's not.
Yeah, you're supposed to check it, right?
I don't even have it. I have it.
Hey, there he goes, right?
What is it?
Build fail.
I'm gonna hit cancel. It seems like everyone but one is having this entity framework migrations error out on them.
Maybe you have to try building your app and see, there might be errors in your app or something. Or restart, or just deleting your migrations and trying just doing one.
I'm gonna hit cancel.
Because mine was fine.
Well, your migrations were fine?
Yeah, mine were fine.
So 2 migrations were fine. I'm gonna hit cancel. This is just on the settings, so we're still here. I'm just gonna do a build solution. Make sure that that's still building. Build succeeded. Okay. So let me go back in here, more actions one last time. Edit.
So underneath the databases, there's, if you click that drop down, there's actually 2 different connection strings that you can choose between. So I wonder if
So under databases,
click on where it says the drop down where it says data source, you have the one from your context file as as well as your.
Well, you want the data source.
you want the you definitely want the data source equals, right?
Yeah. How many migrations do you have in your files, migrations?
I'm gonna click cancel. So the question, I'm gonna pause. So it was pointed out that this little command prompt window was running. So let's go ahead and close that
That's probably it.
and see if that's it. That was definitely running for me, and it was running for a few of us. So let's go back to more actions, edit, and let this spin.
Yep.
Work for you?
Yep.
Okay, good. So databases, check that. Entity framework, check that. Now again, under entity framework, we've got local DB and we've got the TCP. Good thing I don't need that password for anything. All right.
Do we select TCP?
Yeah, not the one that says localhost, the one that says TCP. Under both databases and entity framework migrations, I'm going to click on save. And what's left but to see how, watch it break.
No.
Click the magic button. Checking your application, checking if your application will run successfully. You are publishing the application without bundling the runtime.
Wait, what do you press?
I just clicked publish. Maybe I got excited. Publishing to Azure App Service on Windows.
Dude, yeah, the console during this process is the scariest because like as soon as you see red, it's like, oh my god. But that was a pretty smooth like.
So far. Knock on wood.
Oh yeah. Adding a file.
Publish started, executing commands.
One succeeded, publish. installation of the web app site? Is it a project?
I'll tell you, even when I was a student, and I remember working on like local servers, and it's always terrifying when you reboot a server, because servers just run all day long, and they just run forever, and they reboot forever, and you never have to reboot them. But rebooting a server is terrible because they never come back up, and it's the same anxiety that you get when you're rebooting a server that we're going through right now. Web app was published successfully.
Oh, it worked.
Well, hold on, we gotta test it, right?
It's gonna automatically open it.
So I was hanging out with my buddy from school over this last weekend, and he's out in the industry, and he works for this company, and he's in charge of all their domain controllers, and he had to reboot, and nothing came back up, and the whole company was down, and anyways, he's living that life. And he's been out in the industry for 15 years. So this anxiety doesn't go away. Okay, so here's Evan Book app. It is on AzureWebsites.net. If I log in,
I don't know any of my passwords.
Here's where it breaks, right?
Yeah, so somebody can log in.
well, it didn't look like it brought over my administrator account.
Yeah.
I was able to register.
Register a new-
Okay, let's register a new one.
It's funny, you would think admin would have been seated though.
Yeah. Should be seated.
So it was admin and what? Sesame? SESAME.
Wasn't a capital S, yeah.
Or no, it's a
It should have been Sesame.
Okay, it did not bring over
a dollar
admin.
sign, wasn't it? Sesame or something?
No, it was just normal.
Okay.
It did not bring over our. Now, if I go to books, now noticing it is bringing over books.
No, oh, mine is. Oh, well, this is for something else.
So it did bring over some data from our database, clearly. Let's go ahead and make a non-conflicting account.
Yeah, my admin actually was seated.
It was seated?
I was able to get into it, yeah.
Oh,
I just had to copy and paste the password because I guess I didn't do it correctly.
so
So if you seated an admin, it should be in there.
So Josh seated in an admin. So let's go into models, and wait a minute, this is the wrong repo. So let's go into the right repo and close down the publish, and no, it was under
Configure admin or something, whatever.
domain models,
Or data. Yeah.
data layer.
Oh,
And configuration.
I was able to pull it up on my phone.
should be in, configuration. Yeah.
Configuration.
You might not have done it on this one. Then.
I might not have done it on this one. Hold on. What was the?
Yeah,
You're
you
right.
didn't do it.
You're
You
right.
didn't
This
do it.
is. I didn't seed my admin on this one.
So check your actual database like on Visual Studio, because you should have users on how they're gonna be.
Keep in mind, yeah. So I didn't make my admin account on this one.
But I thought you had other users. And that it should bring those over, shouldn't it, from the database?
No, because it's going from your migration, I think. It's not going from your local database.
It wasn't right. It was going from migration. So if you didn't seed the users initially, I added those users after the fact and made them admins after the fact.
Gotcha.
But admins are working.
Yeah.
A couple people nodding their head. It's just on me because I moved my. This is not like the latest version of this app that I had. Interestingly enough.
Did you think that was gonna work as easy as it did?
No.
You were hoping it would.
Yeah, that's all you can do. Wonderful. Okay. So it is now live, and Ryan says it works on his mobile device. So evanbookapp.azurewebsites.net, of course, should work on mobile. audience at home. Yay.
Works for me on mobile.
Works for us on mobile. Of course, it's a bootstrap site. And so you guys, instead of deploying, now the next thing you can do is just deploy your final project, aka your case study. And voila.